They had no idea, absolutely no idea who they were dealing with when they tried to play you. When the narcissist thought they could twist your mind, dim your spirit, and control your emotions, they truly believed their games were absolute genius. They assumed you would stay confused, stay loyal, stay trapped in the web they spun with their charm, their manipulation, and their endless false promises. They believed you were simply too empathetic, too trusting, and far too forgiving to ever see the truth hiding behind their mask. But what they failed to realize is that every single lie they told, every moment they gaslit you, and every time they tried to rewrite your reality, they were actually exposing themselves. Narcissists never seem to understand this fundamental truth. When you try to break someone who is genuinely good, someone who loves deeply, and someone who gives without any hidden motives, you do not just hurt them. You reveal your own deep emptiness to the world. You show everyone the hollowness behind your smile and the deep cracks in your illusion. At first, they felt powerful. They thought they had you completely under control. They believed they had won because you questioned yourself, because you stayed silent, and because you tried so hard to fix what they kept breaking. But the thing about manipulating a good soul is really quite simple. You never walk away untouched. You lose the very supply you depended on for survival. You destroy the only person who ever saw you as much more than your fragile ego. You survived all of their cycles. You endured the relentless confusion. You walked right through the emotional storms they created out of nowhere. Yet they remained trapped in the exact same empty patterns, chasing the next person to drain and chasing the next life to feed their fragile ego. They thought you would stay down forever. They thought you would never wake up to your true worth. They completely mistook your endless patience for weakness and your deep kindness for blindness. But you were never blind at all, just hopeful. You were never weak, just deeply caring. You were never theirs to control. You were simply giving them a chance they never truly deserved in the first place. And now they watch you rise, not with bitterness, not with revenge, but with clarity, with unshakable strength, and with a profound peace they will never know. You broke free and they stayed right where they have always been, hiding behind the mask they simply cannot live without. They see you rebuilding, rising, and healing into someone they never imagined you could become, because their vision of you was always terribly limited by their own ego. Narcissists are entirely incapable of seeing past themselves. They only ever saw you as a resource, a supply, something to be drained until nothing was left. But now they finally see what you were all along: irreplaceable, rare, deep, and genuinely good. They did not just lose a person, they lost the one single person who gave them the kind of love, the kind of loyalty, and the kind of emotional depth they will never encounter again in this lifetime. And here is the exact thing that torments them now. They did not manipulate someone ordinary, they tried to manipulate you. And that is the true source of their ultimate downfall. The damage that narcissists cause does not simply end when the moment passes. It echoes on. It rewrites their own identity. At first, they suppress the harsh truth. They tell themselves that you were simply too sensitive, that you expected far too much, or that you completely misunderstood them. They invent entire stories in their heads to justify their ongoing cruelty. But those fragile lies never hold up forever. Reality creeps in the exact same way it always does. Quietly and ruthlessly. It whispers softly when they are all alone. It speaks when the mask finally slips. It talks when the room goes completely silent, and it hits them the hardest when they see you thriving. Not in spite of them, but precisely because you successfully escaped them. What narcissists can never understand is that manipulation is an irreversible exchange. They traded your authentic heart for their fragile ego. They traded your unwavering loyalty for their deep insecurity. They traded your pure trust for a temporary sense of power. In doing so, they cursed themselves with the very emptiness they always tried to project onto you. You rebuild your life slowly but surely. They unravel quietly and inevitably. You did not seek petty revenge. You did not try to expose them to the world. You never once sank down to their low level. You simply let life take care of the accounting. And life has a remarkably brutal way of settling scores. Whatever they poured into the world, whether it was gaslighting, deception, or emotional sabotage, comes back to them slowly, methodically, and relentlessly. They end up living right inside the very chaos they created. Their ultimate collapse is never loud at first. Narcissistic decay always starts privately. Their relationships begin to fall apart around them. People gradually stop trusting them. Old patterns repeat themselves. They become total strangers to themselves because you can never build a meaningful life on the foundation of selfishness and manipulation. And maybe they smile when they are out in public. Maybe they laugh much louder than anyone else in the room, but there is a profound hollowness behind it all now. A quiet recognition, a lingering shadow. They know exactly what they did. They know precisely what they lost. And there is simply no path back to what they destroyed. That is the ultimate curse of narcissistic abuse. Once they lose a truly loving soul, they never truly recover from it. But you were never destroyed. You were transformed. You carry scars, yes, but they are just powerful reminders of your strength, your clarity, and your awakening. You did not retaliate. You simply elevated, and that graceful rise is the punishment they never saw coming. Let them live in the world they built with their own hands. Let them drown in the heavy silence that follows the exit of the one who once loved them with absolute sincerity. Let them feel what happens when a narcissist finally loses someone they never deserved to have in the first place, because their calculated manipulation was never just a simple mistake. It was a profound revelation. A clear revelation of who they truly are and a confirmation of who you were all along. And now, as you continue to grow with peace, with discipline, and with unshakable self-worth, they watch you from a distance that will never close again. Narcissists always foolishly believe they can return whenever they want, but not this time, not with you. They had no idea that trying to control you would become the exact thing that exposed them to the core. But now they know. When a narcissist manipulates someone genuine, they do not just hurt that person, they destroy the very last real connection they will ever have in this world. They think it is just a moment, a tiny slip, or a tactical move they can easily justify. But emotional abuse is never a single isolated act. It is a deep fracture in their own identity, and it spreads quietly inside them, slowly poisoning everything they touch. Because you cannot manipulate someone else without ultimately betraying yourself. Your psyche knows the truth, and your conscience knows the truth. Even if they bury it deep under layers of arrogance, under endless excuses, and under fake confidence, it still lingers. It festers inside them. It waits for those quiet moments when their mask finally falls off. They told themselves over and over that they were justified. They said you were just overreacting, that you were too emotional, too intense, or way too loving. But those are simply the stories that narcissists use to run away from the raw truth, the undeniable truth that they violated something sacred and will never get it back. There is always a steep price to pay, and narcissists never seem to understand that while they were busy trying to break you, they were slowly dismantling themselves. Manipulating someone who genuinely loved them was never a victory. It was simply the beginning of their complete psychological unraveling. Life only has true meaning when it is rooted in honesty, humility, and responsibility. Narcissists abandon all of those things completely. They sacrifice their integrity for their ego. They sacrifice genuine connection for petty control. And the heavy chaos they create eventually consumes them from the inside out. They try to distract themselves with noise, with new people, with constant attention, and with shallow validation. But late at night, when everything finally turns quiet, reality shows up. They remember your kindness, your patience, and your loyalty. They remember how you cared when nobody else did, how you gave them what they never deserved, and then they remember what they did to you in return. That kind of guilt never sleeps. It sneaks into all of their new relationships. It poisons their ability to truly connect because deep down inside, they know who they were with you and what they are completely without you. They know they are fully capable of destroying the best thing they ever had, and that haunting knowledge corrodes them slowly, quietly, and permanently. You healed and you grew. You confronted every single wound they created, and you rose above it all. But narcissists remain trapped as prisoners of the exact behaviors they refuse to acknowledge. Their conscience refuses to let them go. Their toxic patterns refuse to let them grow. Their swollen ego refuses to let them evolve. Something profound inside them died the exact day they tried to dominate you. Something honest, something real, and something truly human. And no amount of external validation can ever resurrect what their own ego killed. That is the lasting cost of narcissistic abuse. It is never just about what they did to you. It is entirely about what they did to themselves. They fractured their own character. They undermined their own identity. They taught themselves that hurting someone kind is an acceptable thing to do. And once you do that, you completely lose the ability to build anything meaningful in life. The deeper torment belongs solely to them. They know what they threw away. They know they chose selfishness above all else. They know they lost someone who truly cared for them. And no matter how they spin the story, no matter who they try to blame, that inner voice never stops whispering to them. You did this. You lost them. You will never get them back. So yes, you were hurt. You were deeply wounded. But you healed with absolute dignity. You rose with absolute clarity, while they, on the other hand, are left standing alone in the ruins of their own behavior. They thought your kindness simply meant weakness. They thought your empathy meant total submission. They thought your patience meant dependence on them. They misunderstood every single thing about you. They thought your silence meant weakness. They thought your patience meant you were completely powerless. They believed you were too afraid to speak up, too fragile to stand your ground, and far too naive to see right through their manipulative games. But what they never understood, and may still not fully grasp, is that you were never weak. You were strong in ways their fragile ego could never comprehend. Strength does not always roar. It does not need to explode in sudden anger or lash out with petty vengeance. Real strength, the kind that is deeply forged in self-respect, discipline, and clarity, often appears calm, composed, and completely unshakable. And that was precisely what you possessed. A strength that did not panic, that did not waste precious words on someone who would never truly hear them anyway. They assumed you were easy to manipulate simply because you did not react to every single insult, did not fight every slight, and did not beg for their recognition. You gave them space, not because you were blind to the glaring red flags, but because you genuinely hoped they might show some character, that they might prove capable of true honor. And that careful restraint, that quiet grace made you dangerous in the most dignified way possible. Your silence was never consent to their behavior. Your patience was never surrender. You were watching, listening, taking stock, and simply letting their true nature reveal itself to the world. Over and over again, they failed. And yet, you remained kind. Not blind, not naive, not weak, but firmly unwilling to allow their toxicity to harden your heart. That takes real power. Not the destructive power to tear others down, but the profound power to remain whole, centered, and unshaken, even in the very presence of someone trained in manipulation. And when you finally walked away, when your quiet silence turned into permanent distance, they simply did not know how to react. People who thrive on control and emotional exploitation always panic when their target finally detaches. They are so used to extracting drama and feeding off an emotional reaction, but you gave them absolutely none. You gave them space, and within that space, you let life do all the work. The heavy weight of their own choices became theirs alone to bear, far heavier than any argument, confrontation, or reasoning could ever be. They severely underestimated the profound damage of your silence. Not the cold silence of indifference, but the profound silence of someone who has seen the absolute truth, accepted it completely, and chosen to preserve themselves. That kind of silence is deeply decisive. It is calm, controlled, and entirely final. It is the internal storm finally settling within you, brought on by the clear realization that your dignity and self-respect matter infinitely more than trying to prove a point to someone who refuses to understand. Anyone can shout at the top of their lungs when they are hurt. Anyone can lash out in blind anger, but it takes an entirely different kind of inner strength to feel every bit of the betrayal, the manipulation, and the gaslighting, and still make the conscious choice not to become bitter. That was your ultimate choice. To rise up instead of raging, and to become better instead of broken. They truly thought they had defeated you. They thought your quiet demeanor meant emptiness. They thought your patience meant fear. They thought your grace meant weakness. But in that exact silence, you were rebuilding, reflecting, processing, and leveling up in ways they could never see and could never begin to understand. And beneath that calm exterior, beneath the outward composure, was a fierce resolve they could never measure. You were never stuck. You were never powerless. You were preparing. You were simply letting their chaos reveal itself while you quietly grew far beyond their control. And it certainly did. Now they can finally see it. They see you thriving, smiling freely without needing their validation, and living a full life without their presence, and it deeply unsettles them. The version of you they always believed they could manipulate out of existence is completely gone. You have outgrown their tight cage, stopped justifying your intrinsic worth, and stopped waiting around for them to recognize things they were never capable of seeing, and now they are left to deal with the consequences. Not because you actively punished them, but because life naturally did. Life always exposes narcissists in the end. Life always balances the scales of what they thought they could take for granted, and now they feel the deep ache of what they threw away. The crushing realization that the person they tried so hard to control, discard, and exploit was in absolute truth the strongest and rarest presence in their entire lives. They thought you were fragile, but you proved to be completely unbreakable. They thought you were easily replaceable, but now they finally understand that they lost someone entirely irreplaceable. And you did this without ever raising your voice. You did not chase after them. Your silence, your distance, and your grace all spoke infinitely louder than any confrontation ever could. You never once wasted your precious strength on the wrong person. And now, finally, they are forced to see the undeniable truth. They can never undo what they lost. They can never reclaim what they so carelessly destroyed. And they will never, no matter how hard they try, find the depth, loyalty, and integrity that you embodied. You were never interested in playing their petty games. You showed up every single day with your heart wide open. You gave them complete honesty even when it was terribly inconvenient. You gave them endless patience even when they did not deserve a single ounce of it. You gave them your absolute best self, and they just took it all for granted. But this is not just an ordinary loss for them. This is a profound soul-level loss, because when a narcissist encounters someone who sees them at their absolute worst and still chooses to stay, someone who offers unconditional loyalty, and they foolishly discard that person, the weight of that decision never fades away. It lingers on, it clings tightly to their identity. It becomes a heavy shadow they can never outrun, a quiet voice that whispers to them in the dead of night, in moments of absolute loneliness and in moments of deep stillness. I let the absolute best thing go. At the time, they desperately convinced themselves they were choosing something better, something much easier, something more exciting or more convenient. But now, nothing in their world measures up. Every single new connection feels shallow. Every new person they meet feels fragile. Every distraction, every new beginning, and every single attempt to recreate what they once had with you ultimately fails, because once they experience true authenticity, everything fake feels completely empty. They constantly search for your unique qualities in other people. They chase hollow echoes of the person they lost. Maybe they pretend to the world that they have successfully moved on, but deep down inside, the comparison is always there. A quiet, nagging realization that nothing and no one can ever replace what they destroyed. They lost someone truly rare and truly real. You did not just offer them simple love. You offered them emotional depth, true understanding, and steady stability. You held space for their raging chaos. You carried their heavy pain without any judgment. You genuinely believed in them even when they were utterly incapable of believing in themselves. And they treated all of that like it was totally disposable. That is the ultimate cruelty of narcissists. They simply cannot recognize the true value of genuine care until it is completely gone from their lives. Now they are heavily haunted not only by what they did, but by what they will never, ever have again. And the tragic part is that they did not see it until it was far too late. That is the inevitable price of crossing someone with true integrity. The heavy cost rarely shows in the moment it happens. It shows up years later in the quiet hours, in the overwhelming emptiness, and in the gnawing realization that they burned the bridge to something completely irreplaceable. They vividly remember your laugh. They remember your encouraging words. They remember the deep comfort of knowing that someone genuinely had their back no matter what happened. And now they sit in heavy silence, knowing full well that they destroyed the very thing they always claimed to value most. Loyalty like yours never comes with hidden conditions, and that is precisely what made it so powerful. But they were completely blind to it at the time. Their bloated ego, their emotional immaturity, and their short-sightedness blinded them entirely. And now they are paying the full price for it. Every single day, with every failed connection, every hollow distraction, and every desperate attempt to reclaim validation from elsewhere, you did not have to lift a finger to punish them. Life itself did. Life has a remarkably brutal way of teaching the hardest lessons that narcissists stubbornly refuse to learn until it is far too late. The exact moment they betrayed you, they permanently separated themselves from the one person who always saw the absolute best in them, even when they were acting at their very worst. No empty apology, no clever excuse, and no rewrite of history can ever change that reality. You, on the other hand, carried the pain of the experience, but you also carried your untarnished integrity. You walked away not with a thirst for vengeance, but with profound dignity. And that is something they will never, ever forget. Not because they simply miss what they had, but because they finally understand the magnitude of what they will never get back. The deep connection, the emotional safety, the raw honesty, and the unwavering loyalty. That kind of rare bond does not just grow on trees, it is extraordinarily rare, and they threw it away like trash. Now they are left with a permanent void inside them. They are the ones endlessly searching for echoes of you in people who will never measure up. They are chasing ghosts, desperately hoping to feel even a tiny fraction of what you once offered so freely. And all they ever find is a cold absence. They let go of something deeply sacred. They destroyed something truly beautiful. And in doing so, they sentence themselves to a lifetime where your absence is infinitely louder than any presence they ever try to fill it with. They lost you for good, and they will carry the heavy weight of that loss forever. You, however, could have easily crumbled under the pressure. Not a single person in the world would have blamed you if you did, but you refused to break. You healed completely. You rose above it all. You thrived, and that is the final, unchangeable truth that they can never escape. They thought they could control you, manipulate you, and silence your inner power, but they were dead wrong. True strength is never loud or boastful. It is the quiet grace to endure, the courage to walk away, and the profound wisdom to protect your own heart. You were never broken by their childish games. You were simply refined by the fire. You did not retaliate in kind. You simply rose above. Every single step you take moving forward, every success you achieve, and every quiet moment of peace you experience reflects everything they lost and can never hope to reclaim. They are forced to live with absence and emptiness while you live in total freedom, clarity, and dignity. You survived, you healed, you thrived,